Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching you how to make a sleeveless turtleneck. For me, there's nothing more business cash than a sleeveless turtleneck. They are cute, comfy, and always make me feel like a boss. Speaking of, if you're looking to feel like a boss, homely, dainty, or chic, you're in the right place. We've got hundreds of modern crochet designs to fit any style, with a lot more coming, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on with the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 225 grams of yarn, and that's 450 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order. And enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us your favorite candy. For me, I love a good handful of Twizzlers every now and again. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 3 stitches for this project and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, and half double crochet. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain that starts at about 1 inch underneath our underarm and ends about 1 inch underneath our bust. So I need a total of 5 inches or 13 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 20. And now that we have our chain, we are going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So we're going to insert our hook, and once we have those 2 loops on our hook, we're just going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. That is our first slip stitch. Let's do another one. Into that following chain, insert your hook, yarn over, and automatically pull through both of those loops. And we're going to continue to put 1 slip stitch into every chain. But a really quick tip that I have for you guys when it comes to doing our slip stitches is when we finish every slip stitch, make sure that we're not accidentally tugging too tightly on our working yarn, otherwise the following rows can be really tight to work into. So let's just do another one. Go ahead and insert your hook into that following chain, yarn over, pull through both loops, and move on to the next one. And now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're going to need to start the following row with an increase. So how we're going to do an increase is actually start with a chain 2. So there's 1, and then there's 2. Now that first chain that we made is going to count as a stitch, and then that second chain that we made is going to be our turning chain. So what we're going to do from here is flip our work, and then we're going to insert our hook into that second chain from our hook's back loop. So we're going to skip this one, insert your hook into that following stitch's back loop because now we want some ribbing, yarn over and pull through both of those loops like a regular slip stitch. There's our first loop, and there's our second loop. And from here we're going to continue to do back loop slip stitches until we reach the end of the row. So start by inserting your hook into that following stitch's back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, yarn over and pull through everything on your hook, remembering not to tug too tightly after every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of this row. So now that we've made our way down to the end of our row 2, we're going to continue to do more back loop slip stitch rows with an increase into every other row, just like how we did. So what we're going to do from here, starting off our row 3, just to show you guys a repeat one more time, we're going to chain 1, flip our work. Now since we're along the bottom, we're going to insert our hook into the last stitch from our previous row's back loop, pull through everything, and continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Once we reach the increase end right over here, I'll meet you guys back. Alright, so now that we made our way all the way down, we're going to increase again. So just like how we did the previous row, we're just going to chain 2. That first chain is going to count as a stitch. That second chain is going to count as our turning chain. We're going to flip our work, and then we're going to start by inserting our hook into that second chain from our hook's back loop with a slip stitch and pull through everything, and then that's it. From here, we're just going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until this portion that we have can stretch, and making sure that we are stretching it as if we're wearing it when we're putting it up to ourselves, from mid-underarm over to the front of our body, and I will meet you guys back along the increase end so that we can make a chain that works straight up to our shoulder. Alright, so I am back with my shoulder portion. I have a total of 9 rows, and my width is just about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters, and that is unstretched because remember, this top half has a really good stretch to it. But all we're going to do from here is make an even number chain that reaches all the way up to the top of our shoulder. Now I've already measured mine out. I need about 6.5 inches or 17 centimeters, so I made a chain of 26. But once we have our chain, all we're going to do is slip stitch all the way down our chain, and then back loop slip stitch all the way down the body portion. So since we already know how to do this part, let's do this really quickly. Once we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and then do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, go ahead and insert with a slip stitch. And then from here, put 1 slip stitch into every chain, and I'll meet you back once we reach the body portion. Just to remind you, we're going to do back loops. So now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're now back down to the body portion, and just as a reminder, we're going to be doing back loop slip stitches into each of these stitches. So if you guys need to, go ahead and flip your work, find that first back loop, and insert your hook into there with a back loop slip stitch and make your way all the way down, putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And at the end of the row, we're just going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, making our way all the way back. And just continue to repeat our back loop slip stitch row with absolutely no increases and no decreases until we get a shoulder width that we like. So I'm going to stop just about 2 inches before the base of my neck, making sure that we meet back along the bottom so we can get started on the neckline right after that. Alright, so I am back with my shoulder portion. I now have a total of 16 rows, and my width is now just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters, still unstretched, and now we're going to get started on the neckline. So this part's going to be pretty simple. We're all going to start by inserting our stitch marker into any stitch from the top, right where the base of our neck is. So I've actually inserted my stitch marker into the 6th stitch from the top, and that's just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters. And from here, since we all should have ended along the bottom, all we're going to do is chain 1, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch until we reach our stitch marker. Now that we've made our way all the way up to our stitch marker with our back loop slip stitches, all we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and then continue to do our back loop slip stitch row with, again, no increases and no decreases until this reaches across our chest over to the other side of the base of our neck. So from here, all we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and then make our way down with 1 slip stitch into every stitch. And I'll meet you guys back, making sure that we meet back along the top, just so we can work straight into the shoulder from there. So I have just finished up my neckline, and I now have a total of 33 rows. Now, my width is just about 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters, and what we're going to do from here is do our shoulder portion. So since we all should have ended along the top, we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped on this side. So if you guys have my numbers, I skipped a total of 6 stitches. So from where we're at, I'm going to make a chain of 6, and then I'm going to slip stitch down my chain, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, making my way all the way down. And from here, we're just going to do back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases for the exact same amount of rows as our first shoulder portion. And once we have that, we should end along the bottom, and then I'll show you guys how we're going to be doing our underarm. So now that I have my second shoulder all finished up, my width is now 6.5 inches or 17 centimeters, still unstretched, and now we're going to go in with our underarm portion. So first things first, we're all going to need to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made when we worked away all the way up to our shoulder. So if you guys have my numbers, I made a chain of 26. So from here, starting from the top, I counted down 26 stitches and inserted my stitch marker. and since we all should be along the bottom, what we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, working our way all the way up until we work into the stitch right before our stitch marker. So now that we put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch until we have reached our stitch marker, our following row is going to start with a decrease of 2. So from here we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now starting with our decrease, we're going to find the last stitch from our previous row and insert your hook into that back loop, yarn over, and pull through for 2 loops on our hook. And then we're going to insert our hook into that following back loop as well. And then once we have those 3 loops on our hook, just yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops, and that is our decrease. And then from here, we're going to continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now we're only going to be decreasing into every other row. So at the end of this row, chain 1, flip our work, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then right before we get started on the following row, I will meet you guys back just once more so we can decrease together again. We've just worked our way all the way back up with our 3rd row when it comes to this underarm portion. And since we're along the top, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and start with a decrease. And how that's going to work again is start by inserting your hook into the last stitch from our previous row's back loop, pull through into that following stitch's back loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops, and continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of this row, chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And we're just going to continue to repeat those 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as our first underarm portion, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. So my front panel is all finished up. My width is now a total of 8 inches or 20 centimeters unstretched, and the back panel is actually going to be done exactly the same way. So go ahead and make a second one, and I'll meet you guys back to seam everything together. Now that my front and my back panel are all finished up, the next thing we're going to do is seam our shoulders. So first things first, we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back. We're going to be inserting our yarn onto our hook, pull through. We're going to do a chain up of 1 to secure, and then we're just going to be single crocheting, making sure that we're working in through both the front and the back panel at the same time, putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So we're all going to start by finding our first side row within the front panel. Mine is this one right here. It's this divot, so I'm just going to insert my hook into that top loop. And then I'm going to find that same top loop within the back panel. This is mine right here, so I'm going to insert my hook into there, and then I'm going to single crochet. But a really quick tip that I like to do is to weave in my ends as I go, so since I have this tail end, I'm just going to place this over the loops I just inserted my hook into, and then I'm going to single crochet per usual. And then the tail end will be in the middle of the single crochet, so we don't have to deal with it later. That is my first single crochet. Now let's do the next one. This is my following side row right here, which is this raised row. I'm going to find that top loop, and then find the same top loop within the back panel, which this is mine right here. Insert your hook into there, and then single crochet. And we're going to continue to do this, making our way all the way down, and when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. So now that my shoulders are all seamed up, the next thing we're going to seam is our sides. So for the side seam, we're going to be doing an outside loop slip stitch seam. So we're going to want to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the seam that we have for the shoulder is along the inside. So we're going to start by inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now to do our first outside loop slip stitch seam, we're going to start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel, and we're going to insert our hook into there. Next, we're going to find that back loop within the back panel within that next available stitch, and then insert in through that back loop. And once we have all 3 loops, we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3. And we're doing this so that it just looks like another slip stitch row. Let's do this again. Find that next stitch into the front panel, insert your hook in through that front loop. Find the next stitch within the back panel, insert your hook into that back loop, and yarn over, pull through all 3. And that's it. Continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. So now that everything is all seamed up, we're ready to get started on our armhole detail. We're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the side seam that we have is flipped along the outside and the shoulder seam is along the inside. And next we're going to be inserting our hook into the last side seam stitch that we have. Go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook. Pull through and making sure that we're working clockwise or to the left. We're going to start by putting one single crochet into every side row that we have. So let's just do the first few together. Now this is my first side row right here. It's this divot, so I'm just going to find that top loop and insert my hook into there. And just like how we did for the shoulder seam, if you guys have these tail ends like me, I'm just going to place it over my hook and then single crochet per usual. Now there's my first single crochet. Now let's do the next. This is my next side seam, which is this raised row. I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook into there, and then single crochet. And that's it. For this portion, we're just going to be putting one single crochet into every side row. And then once we reach our shoulder, we're just going to be putting one single crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way up and around. Once we reach the underarm portion for the back, continue to put one single crochet into every side row and slip stitch into that chain space. So now that we have single crocheted all the way around our armhole, we're now going to get started with the details. So it's just going to be a bunch of back loop slip stitch rows. So what we're going to do from here, right after we have slip stitched into that chain space, we're now going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our detail to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about an inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 4. Now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and pull through everything. Let's do this again. Into that next chain, insert, and pull through everything. And that's it. We're going to continue to put one slip stitch into every chain, and then we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So now that we've made our way all the way down our chain, we're going to need to slip stitch it into the base. So inserting our hook into that next available stitch that we have, we're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook to close off this first row, and then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch, flip our work, and then we're going to be putting one back loop slip stitch into every stitch because we want this to have some really clean ribbing. And now that we've made our way to the end of our row, we're just going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. And then I'll meet you guys back at the base. And now that we're at the base, we're going to connect it just once more. So insert your hook into that following stitch into the base with a slip stitch to close off this row. And then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch, flip our work, and then make our way down, putting one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And then that's it. We're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. And then I'll meet you guys back so we can seam it all together. Alright, so now that we've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows, we don't have any more left to work into, so now we're just going to seam everything together. And this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so we're first going to start by inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, and then the seam is going to be the same as our sides, so let's just do the first one together. We're all going to yarn over and pull through everything, and then we're going to find that first available stitch into the front panel and insert your hook in through that front loop. Next, we're going to insert our hook into that next available stitch into the back panel, insert your hook in through that back loop, and then just yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and that's it. Continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. So now that both of my armhole details are all finished up, let's get started on the bottom. Start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, and insert your hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom. And insert our yarn onto our hook. From there, just pull through, do a chain up of 1, and then put one single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. So let's just do the first few. So finding my first side row, mine is this raised one right here. I'm just going to insert my hook into that top loop, and then I'm going to single crochet. So there's my first one. Finding my next side row, it's this divot right here. So finding that top loop, insert your hook into there, and then single crochet. And just continue to do this, making our way all the way around and then slip stitch into that chain space. Alright, so our single crochet row along the bottom is all finished up. And now all we're going to do is make a chain the length that we'd like the bottom of ours to be. Now I would like for mine to be just about 9 inches or 23 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 45. Now that we have our chain, we're going to half double crochet all the way back down. So we're going to start off by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And then into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a half double crochet. So insert your hook, pull through 3, and continue to put 1 half double crochet into every chain. So now that we've put 1 half double crochet into every chain, we're going to need to connect it into the base. But first things first, we're going to want to make sure that our work is flipped right side out and that we are working clockwise or to the left, because the ribbing that we're about to do isn't reversible. So once we have that all figured out, we're going to count up 1 and 2 available stitches into the base. Into that second stitch, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So go ahead and insert your hook into there, yarn over, and pull through everything. And now our first row is all finished up. And now our following row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row. So what we're going to do is just slip stitch into that following stitch, flip our work, and then make our way down, putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So just to do the first one, we're going to find the last stitch from our previous row, insert your hook in through that back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything. And we're going to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now that we've put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, now we're just going to alternate between a back loop half double crochet row and a back loop slip stitch row. So since we're along the end, we're going to chain 2 to get the height for our half double crochet row, flip our work, then make our way down, putting 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So just to do the first one, we're going to yarn over, insert your hook into that first stitch's back loop, pull through 3, and that's it. Continue to put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we reach the base, because I want to connect it into there just once more. And just to connect this into the base once more, we're going to count up 1, count up 2 stitches, slip stitch into there, and now our third row is all closed off. And just to work our way up to our following slip stitch row, just slip stitch into that following stitch, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can seam everything together. So I've just made my way all the way around with my back loop half double and back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're just going to seam it together, and this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam. So the same seam that we did for the sides. So since we already know how to do this, let's just get the first few done. We're all going to start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel, and then we're going to insert our hook in through that front loop or the loop that's nearest to you. And then we're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel and insert your hook in through that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us. Yarn over and pull through everything, and that is it. We're just going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and when we don't, we're going to do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so now that everything is pretty much all put together, the last thing we're going to have to do is our turtleneck. So first things first, we're going to need to single crochet along the entirety of our neck hole. So we're first going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, and then we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along our neck hole. Go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook. Pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and from here we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row, and then 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way around. Let's just do the first few. We're all going to start by finding our first side row. This is mine right here, so I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook into there with a single crochet. And a really quick tip that I have for this single crochet row is this single crochet row is going to be as wide as our turtleneck can get. So make sure that we're not single crocheting too tight when we're working into this portion. So keep a medium to loose grip. Find our following side row, insert your hook into that top loop, and single crochet, and continue to do this, making our way all the way around. So now that our single crochet row is all finished up, we have slip stitched into that chain space, and now we're going to make a chain the length that we want our turtleneck to be. Now I want my turtleneck to be able to fold over, so I'm going to make mine about 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters, and that's going to be a chain of 25. And now that we have our chain, we are going to block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch, and from here we're going to be putting 1 slip stitch into every chain, so basically the same exact way that we did our armhole detail. Now that we put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So inserting our hook into that next available stitch, we're going to insert it with a slip stitch, and that's how we close off our row 1. And then just to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and then do back loop slip stitches, making our way all the way down. And at the end of the row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, connecting it into the base the same way that we just did. So this is exactly the same way that we did our armhole detail. Go ahead and make your way all the way around, and I'll meet you back just to remind you how we're going to seam it together. So I've made my way all the way around with my back loop slip stitch rows, and now we're going to seam it. And this is going to be the same seam that we have done for the armhole detail and for the sides. So let's just make sure that our work is flipped right side out. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Yarn over, pull through everything, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And just to do the first one together, we're going to start by inserting our hook into that first available stitch into the front panel, inserting your hook only in through that front loop. And then we're going to find that next stitch into the back panel and insert your hook only into that back loop. And when we have those 3 loops, just yarn over, pull through all 3, and that's it. Continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. And now that the turtleneck is all finished up, we are all done. The last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!